If you slow down and you start being able to identify some of those negative thinking habits and patterns that are holding you back, you can recognize them, learn how to release them, let them go, and then start living your life with this level of intentionality that it only takes a little bit of that to prove to yourself that, like, hey, I thought that things always had to be this way, but I recognized this way that I was thinking and I changed it. And now things are different.
Welcome to the Angels and Awakening podcast, where we connect you with your angels, loved ones, and soul self. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancius. My journey began when I started hearing my late father before I knew he'd passed. Through my readings, membership, and Angel Reiki school, I help you awaken, heal, and master your unique spiritual gifts. If you feel called to work with me, it's your angels guiding you to discover your soul's highest purpose. Details at theangelmedium.com. Thank you, Earth Angels, for the 5-star reviews. You're entered into a drawing to win a free session. Now, let's see what messages your angels have for you today. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Angels and Awakening podcast. Today, we're here with author of Brave New You, a roadmap to believe that more is possible, Cory Allen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cory, I want to start out with possibilities because I work a lot with energy. And when you work with energy, you see that there's this hope for the future, that we as souls have found like endless, limitless, infinite possibilities that we're here for. So many creative aspects of our souls that we want to experience, express to the world. But so often people limit themselves with possibilities. As you were writing the book, what did you find with this? And how many people do you think are really kind of limiting their possibilities? How many people are really open to all of the possibilities in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important question. I think that most people are limiting themselves and their possibilities. If we look at just the way that life unfolds for us, it happens naturally, and that's a part of what makes it so difficult. So, for example, we're born, whatever the influence we have from our family, our surroundings, the time in which we're born, all the culture, all these different factors, we don't really have this sense of self-awareness. So we're just kind of figuring things out as we go. And ultimately what's happening is we're reacting to life. We're reacting to like the chance of life. We're reacting to the circumstances that we get in. And so as that's happening, we're building these behavioral ways of thinking and behavioral habits of action in our life, right? And over a long period of time, what happens is that we generally start looking at those patterns in which we just happen to think in because of where we came from in our lives as what's possible. We see like, oh, well, things have always been this way. And it's like, no, that's just what the chance of life kind of threw you. That's the way of thinking you got into because of what you happen to experience in life. And so I think that a lot of us mistake what quote unquote seems normal for us as all that there is. If you slow down and you start being able to identify, and this is kind of what I start in the book with, if you're able to identify some of those negative thinking habits and patterns that are holding you back, you can recognize them, learn how to release them, let them go, and then start living your life with this level of intentionality that it only takes a little bit of that to prove to yourself that, like, hey, I thought that things always had to be this way, but I recognized this way that I was thinking and I changed it. And now things are different. I was able to grow. I was able to make some type of impact. And once you do that once, then that's where the whole thing starts growing because you start building this self-trust. You recognize that change is possible. And if you want, you can grow and continue scaling it from there.
You know, when I was reading your book, one of the things that I was thinking to myself is, and I think you were around at this time dabbling in spirituality, but I'm not sure. The movie The Secret, do you remember when it came out in like 2005, 2006?
I do, yes.
Okay, so what I was thinking as I was reading your book is that everybody was so excited about that movie and it got so many people amped up. But the one point that it kind of missed is it made people think that they could be bystanders and passive in their life and just let it all come to you. And I was like, he rewrote it. He rewrote it so that people get that they can't be a passive bystander, that they have to be the active participant.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, I mean, my work is all about closing the gap between the part of your imagination, which is keeping you kind of in fantasy land, and what is really happening in reality that will create results. So I like things to be actionable and to really be process driven so that we can actually get in there and start living this stuff and making change happen, as opposed to thinking about it and then getting frustrated and turning on ourselves, becoming frustrated or angry at ourselves whenever it doesn't happen. And so, yeah, that process is really like, sure, visualize whatever you want, dream as big as you can. Perfect, beautiful. Most of us don't dream big enough. That's one of the limiting things is like we think, oh, well, maybe I could write a book. It's like, that's cool. But think maybe I could write a perennial classic that lives on forever. You know what I mean? Like, really, that's think big. And even if you don't reach that, the enthusiasm and the energy behind that will have you reach more than you would have otherwise. So identifying that what you want, thinking big, but then really understanding that you have to then put in the action, put in the work, and start creating a bridge between where you are here and what that goal is.
You know, you touched on something that just kind of sparked a question. I've heard a lot of people say lately, don't think of reaching as many people as possible. Think about the quality. And it kind of hurt my heart a little bit when I heard it because I was like, but can't you do both?
Yeah, you can. I mean, definitely. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of approach, right? So, first off, I think that, I mean, content, like quality work is important no matter what your goals are, right? So, if you want to reach 1,000 people and really connect closely with them and build a relationship with them, great, have high quality work. If you want to reach 10 million people and really have a strong impact, then great, create really good work. And like both those things are needed. But I think it's more about like, and your intention of what you want your relationship to the people that you're reaching to be. And I think it's just a matter of understanding that at scale that's going to change in a lot of different ways. And so, just recognizing that because a lot of people want to stay connected to people who engage with their work and they want to have a communication and they want not to get too complicated, but they want their own relationship to how people receive their work to be sort of controllable and connected to that in some way. But if you're really going for scale, it's really important to create high value work, but you just have to understand that once it's out there, it needs to be communicated in a slightly different way so that it can become understandable by as many people as possible. And then you'll have the less of an ability to kind of control it and stay connected with it afterwards. But either way, I mean, both are possible. And I think if we really examine that and think about that, like if you think about some of the authors that have written books that are huge, for example, like one of the biggest selling books in self-development over the last 5 years is like Atomic Habits or something.
Mhm.
Like that book is great and it's full of, research and et cetera, et cetera. It's all very strategic and logical and important and meaningful. And it's sold like 15 million copies. So I mean, it's, it's a possibility.
So, when you're looking at this, and you touched on this before, so many people have patterns within their lives of behavior. And one of those patterns can be maybe they were hurt in the past and they are letting that hurt impact them today and not wanting to open up to possibilities out of fear of being hurt again or being let down or disappointed. How do we change those models of behavior to really step out of that cycle and allow ourselves to dream again?
Yeah, I think that a mindset shift is really valuable here. If we look at like, okay, I want to move into this new unknown area that would be exciting for me or a growth area, but I feel scared because as you said, you were hurt in the past, and so you don't want to open up and become vulnerable to that. If we look at what's actually happening over time, not moving, not allowing yourself to be open and to move into a new territory is going to keep you stagnant. It's going to keep you self-contained. And what's contained, what you're holding on to, is the very hurt that you're scared of feeling by going into the unknown. So I think that recognizing that, if you're like, say you have this wall up between the possibility and where you are, and you've got, well, I'm still hurt from this. It's like what you're doing is basically just closing yourself off to live with that pain, to live with that suffering and that fear. And it's only through, let's metaphorically continue on, breaking through that wall, breaking through that barrier, that you get to move on to a new dimension of your life, a new level of your life, and leave that pain behind on the other side of the wall. And I think that if we can, shift your mindset and realize that the freedom comes from doing that, as opposed to the other way around, it can be really impactful.
When it comes to your work, you talk about it a lot throughout the book, intuition and really listening to that inner wisdom. When you look at your own life personally, Corey, how do you work with your own intuition? Do you get visions? Do you hear things auditorily coming in? Do you get knowingnesses? Do you get it all?
It's mainly knowingnesses. I like that word. It's basically, I've been meditating for 25 years. And so I'm very conscious of what's happening inside as far as arising thoughts and formations and so forth. And it's kind of like I have a camera running on the inside of my mind all the time, as well as looking out into the world. And so whenever there is something that's arising and there's also an accompanied, generally like a sensation that comes along with that, a feeling of, I guess the best way to describe it is kind of groundedness.
Mhm.
That's whenever I listen to those things. And sometimes they will emerge visually for me because, like, for example, with this book, one of the practices I do is I like to kind of put my mind in the mind of the prospect or the reader or something like that. And whenever I was trying to make sure that the name was correct, like one of the things I would do in my meditation is really think about, like, who is a person that's going to read this book? Let's see, what is their life like? Let's really visualize and get inside of a person. What are they feeling? Where are they? What are their hopes? What do they wish they could change? And I would, visualize very clearly, like being in this person's body, imagining like kind of what an original mind would be like. Maybe they don't, know a lot of the things I'm familiar with. They're searching, what are they looking for? And I'd even visualize them just like getting out of their car, walking to a bookstore, going over to the new releases and looking. And I'm like, what is the thing that they need to see on that shelf that will be this key that will unlock a lot for them? And I would do visualizing practices like that. So and whenever it feels right in that kind of visual experience, then I'm like, okay, that all makes sense. And so in those terms, I definitely work with kind of a visual element, but generally it's a knowingness.
That's amazing. So, when you're working with people who haven't maybe trusted their intuition in the past, but you're trying to help them trust that intuition, what steps have you found to be most helpful to them?
Yeah, I think that really understanding, I think, why they aren't trusting it in the first place is really useful. And we have a real habit of like denying ourselves, denying what feels right to us. And generally, it's because of a couple of reasons. One of which is that in the way that we grew up, we didn't feel a level of, I think, encouragement, a level of support, a level of safety to where we were able to trust ourselves, to trust what feels right to us, because we were always needing to change and kind of mimic how we were actually feeling so that we could fit into whatever would be comfortable kind of in our family system, or in the social system we were in. Another reason is the outside influence. It's like the world, everyone is like, we're all lawyers like litigating on behalf of our realities. It's like everyone in the world is just like, this is right. You should do this. You should do this. And even like at a cultural level, it's like you have to hit these beats in your life, like, go to college, meet someone, have children, do whatever, etc. So there's all this pressure of the ways that we should be. And that causes us to second guess ourselves and to deny what feels right to us, because not only do we feel like that if we do just kind of carve our own path, that we'll face resistance. We might, face some weirdness, some separation from people in different paths and things in our lives. But also we will think like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like if like I'm the only one that wants to do this and this is what feels right to me, but like no one else is doing this. And so like, is there something wrong with me? I think identifying all of those limiting thoughts and things that are factors to begin with is really valuable. And then once we start to assess those things, we can again just shine the light of reality on them and show how they're just stories, they're just narratives, they're things that we're imagining that we are applying to our experience, that we're assuming is reality, we're assuming is facts. And we will look at them with a close eye, with an objective eye. We can see that they're simply stories. We can let those things go. And then we can start going into this testing period where we go, okay, this feels right. I really want to do this. We do it, and then you can see everything's fine. And honestly, no one cares, probably. And so, but then also you feel good, you feel energized, you feel more alive. So good, that was okay, that was safe. Let's do it a little bit more and a little bit more. And then before you know it, you build up this, cycle of self-trust and feedback.
It's interesting. I have a Babe Ruth quote etched in wood on this piece of wood that I look at every morning before I get up and every night before I go to bed. And it says something to the effect of, it's hard to beat a person who doesn't give up. And one of the gifts that I've gotten out of recording this podcast for over 5 years now and getting to meet amazing people like yourself is this energy and knowledge that everybody has, and you say it in the end of the book, everybody has doubts, everybody has challenges. Nobody gets into anything and just it manifests in 3 days. It's work. This is a lifetime of work that we're here to do. But it seems to me, and you've met just extraordinary people throughout the world, that if you just keep going, you'll eventually arrive at your destination.
Oh yeah, I mean, effort plus consistency equals lasting change. That's pretty much the formula. And just, I think continuing on and the important factor, as you mentioned in the end of the book, is like understanding that life, as I put it in there, is not going to be a succession of green lights. Like that's just not being realistic. And we wouldn't want it to all work out perfectly. It's because of the conflicts, the problem solving, the surprises on the path that kind of alter how we think about our goals and what we're doing in our lives. Those are all moments of insight. It shows us more about ourselves, it clarifies what we want and what we're trying to do in our lives. And so the important thing is to recognize that there'll always be challenges. There will always be good times as well. It doesn't really matter. It's about how we engage with those moments, the mindset in which we engage with them. If there's a small bit of resistance and you throw your hands up and go, "Oh God, where's my fainting couch? I need to, I need a chaise lounge to lay down on it, and collect myself." What you're doing is like you're basically just creating this story of suffering for yourself. But
Mhm.
if you approach it with curiosity and with openness, then that conflict becomes something that is empowering for you, and that will help you continue on with your journey. And I think just moving with a bit more openness and really non-attachment to, those problems and leading with curiosity and a level of optimism is really, really valuable.
Here's our free and paid upcoming events. Angel Reiki School is in person November 8th through 10th in Chicagoland, or begin online November 1st. My new course, Release Fear and Embrace Miracles, starts November 1st online. Become a member to get this course free, or it's $133 for non members. We have a free workshop October 23rd at 8 p.m. Central on how fear is really holding you back. And join our free prayer meeting right before that at 7 p.m. Central. Sign up for all of this and more at theangelmedium.com/events.
That's amazing. Well, I feel like your book was just such a blessing and a gift to me when I was reading it because I spent the last half of 2023 writing my second book and I put so much time in it because I wanted it to just have this quality factor and I really wanted to up my writing skills. So I joined two very influential writing groups with teachers who have worked at publishers for just years and years and years. And I didn't submit it to literary agents, but I did have one big agent through a friend who reached out who wanted to read it. I know that most publishers don't take manuscripts, from people, but I had a publisher who wanted to see it. So I sent it to these two places, never heard back from the literary
Mm.
agent, and got the no from the publisher. And I know that, sometimes you have to send it out to 100 different places, but my default mindset goes, I'm bad, I'm wrong, it should have been better, and to all these different things. But you talk about in your book that if we really just see them as portals of energy, that we can really continue going deeper into the possibilities that are there for us. Can you describe portals to begin with?
For sure. Yeah, I'd love to. And also, in terms of like how I would approach that, the feeling that you were talking about submitting your manuscript and not hearing back and then eventually getting a no, I would be like, well, okay, there's one way that it's not going to work. Like now I know that. Now
Yeah.
let's go like use that information to go approach the next one. And like, are there changes I need to make now? Like, was there
Yeah.
feedback? Like, let me consider maybe why this didn't work. A post mortem, whenever someone passes away, they analyze why they die. I like this notion and creativity of a pre-mortem. It's like, so before I put this out here, let's imagine what could have gone wrong and why it didn't work before it's even out there, and do like a little pre-mortem on this project. So it's a good opportunity for stuff like that.
I love it.
Um, in terms of portals, these are these interesting moments in life that I noticed where every time that something really like big happened for me, there's been, I don't know, half a dozen or so really big kind of breakthrough moments. And also that sentence right there, I hear myself saying, should be a good indicator for people, is they think that there will be one big moment for them and like, okay, I made it. It's like, no, it is a constant grind of moment after moment after moment after moment after moment. And that's just the lifestyle. Is it's like you're always moving forward, you're always trying to, you have one kind of thing happen after another, and it just takes so long. And that's why, the 10-year overnight success kind of stories. This is like, now they've been working and like crushing it for 10 years, but it took that long for you to even hear about them, you
Yeah.
know? So people should, not be dissuaded by, not feeling like they're making it immediately and whatever they're trying to do. But the portals, like, so what I analyzed over time was that like there would be an element of my personality and expertise, and then a separate element of my personality and expertise, which I'd never combined before. And there would be these things in life that arose that it would invite me to put those two things together in a way I'd never considered and move forward into this, which I kind of, jokingly call them like another dimension. It's because once you walk through there, things change for you. An example of that would be 12 years ago. So I guess in my teens and early 20s, I was like composing music. And then I started a music production company, which I did for 10 years of like producing artist albums. And then I was going on, this is like 12 years ago, I was going on a friend's podcast, and his audience started hitting me up and they were like, you should start your own podcast. And I was just like, all right, I guess that'd be cool. That'd be fun. And the thing, happened right there is like this portal opened where I thought, all I do with my friends anyway is sit around and talk about this type of stuff. That's what I love doing. And I have a studio and I know how to produce audio perfectly. Like I could put those things together and just easily, I could do a podcast tonight, like it's right there. It's like begging me to make, but I never considered applying those two things together. And it's so little, invitations like that. I think every time it's happened, it's been really important. And I have a theory as to why. I have a theory about my theory. I have a theory as to why it works like that. It's because like when we look to create something new, then we look at the landscape of like what's happening out there. We think what type of books are out there, what type of podcasts are out there, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And this can be, someone listening to this right now, this can be in your personal life as well. You can map this onto anything. You could say, what should this relationship look like? Like, what should my professional life look like? We look at like examples of what's out there and we think, okay, I gotta make a really good version of what's out there. That's how I'll stand out. It's like, well, no, you won't. Because the thing that you're mimicking is already the good version of the thing that you're trying to make a good version of. New things are successful because they don't exist. And it's through finding these two elements of yourself that are great at what they're doing and you hadn't connected them yet. By connecting those two things, you create something new within yourself, and then you're able to create something new within the world. I
Mhm.
think a lot of people get to that place right there, but then they feel fear because they go, well, I have this idea that's unique or this approach to doing things, but like no one else is doing this, so it must not work. And it's like, no, no one else is doing it because they haven't thought of it yet. And it's through doing the thing and putting it out there that you become the one that people start mimicking because you actually made something new.
That's so true. A lot of times in my sessions or readings, spirit will come in and say to the client, your brain works differently and you make connections that other people don't see. And that is a gift. But a lot of people don't recognize it as a gift.
Yeah, for sure. It's like the thing that you think sets you back is actually what sets you apart. It's like I could look at myself and go, and that's an important thing. Like people should recognize. Like I could look at myself and go, like, well, I'm a bald guy with a beard. I wish I was more, editorially handsome for, doing stuff in public, and that could make me feel bad about myself. Or I could go, well, I actually look like a strong, confident, stoic, kind of knowledgeable type of person. And that's actually really advantageous to what I'm doing? And so it's kind of looking at the things that you think are holding you back, generally are actually things that are making you unique and people dig about you?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to that feeling of we're all going to come to those crossroads where something that we wanted to work just does not work. And we've said before, all you got to do is keep going. But you talk about this a little bit in the book. It doesn't stop you from being human. Like you're going to have disappointment. How do you personally work with that? You allow yourself to feel it for a little bit? Do you allow yourself to just kind of sit with it, look at those different perspectives, and see which way the universe is inviting you to go?
Yeah, I have a very thrifty sort of inward world where I will, if something happens, I'll basically, it generally just takes a beat because I'll be like, well, that sucks. But actually, that's kind of what my mind is like because I lead so much with the curiosity and like my drive is very relentless because there's an infinite amount of things we could be doing. There's an infinite amount of possibilities. And so if something doesn't work out, I'm like, well, that's too bad. Okay, cool. Like now what can I do? And that's generally how I feel about things. So I think if I'm trying to think of the last like huge bummer, thing that was really difficult. Yeah. I mean, I think that like I had a big idea. It actually turned out to be a great thing. And I think I assessed it pretty quickly. Is like a couple of years ago, I had a really big idea for a book project that I launched. I proposed to my last publisher and I put a lot of work into it. I knew it would be really expensive to produce. And, it's a big ask of what I had in mind. I showed it to them and they didn't see the vision and they were like, this would be too expensive. And it's just, I don't know, this is too big of a risk. And I was just like, God, I knew that was like that felt like the thing. It felt so, so good. And then I was like, I felt kind of bummed about it. And I was like, well, let me put some space around this and let me like look at what the reality is here. And I looked at it and I thought, I think I needed to get that out of my system so that I could actually get back to what was really important in the work that I was really intended to be doing, which is like putting out this book. Where I was like, I tried to create this thing that was sort of more artistic than I think functional for people. And where my heart lies is really, of course, I look at everything as a creative project, but I really want functionality for people. I want actual change. And so I looked at it, I thought, man, I think I dodged the bullets. Like, because that, if I would have put out this big, expensive, kind of a more artistic project, I think it might have not led me to where I actually wanted to go. So it's like, I just try and look at all the perspectives of it. If I do feel something that's disappointing, I allow myself to feel it, but I generally very quickly move back to curiosity and kind of excitement about what's next.
Friends, I just want to thank you for sharing each episode with your friends. Because of you, we've hit nearly 10 million downloads a year. Wow. As a thank you and gift, please enjoy my free 31-day angel success formula at theangelmedium.com so you can start connecting with your angels today. And please share today's episode if you've enjoyed it and tag me at Angel Podcast. Do you think that that is a brain type from everything that you've looked at? Because there's that ADHD brain type that kind of snaps back really easily. And when I'm working with my clients and students, there are a lot of people who have a different brain type who just want to color in between the lines. They don't want to mess anything up. They want to follow the steps. They just want to be, and you can't fault them for it. It's just how they're wired. It's just who
Mhm.
that they are. When you've come across those folks, is there a way to make that brain shift to help them snap back faster or see that there's another direction to go?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think neuroplasticity change is really valuable. So it's like if it's really hard for them to take disappointment, or I would say what they perceive as disappointment, then they should put themselves in situations where they're going to be disappointed more, take more risks, take more chances, because the more that they get familiar with the process of ultimately what's happening is they've created expectations which they're attached to. So again, we're back to this story thing. So they're telling themselves, this is the thing, this is what's going to happen. And ultimately, not to I go too white hot here, but really it's a sense of entitlement. It's believing that what you're imagining, that the world will bend to your will, and then being crushed whenever your entitlement is kind of exposed for what it is. So back to short answer, people should just get in that situation where they're taking a bit more chances, they're putting themselves out there, get used to feeling what it feels like to feel disappointed. And because that moment is generally a peak moment for someone, that's what, because you don't feel it, you feel it what how many books do you submit? One, one a year, you don't feel it, how many times do you get broken up with in a relationship? It's not a common thing for you to get into a peak state of emotional feeling. So it feels really overwhelming because you don't know how to deal with it. You're like in a tornado. But if you put yourself in a situation to where you're kind of feeling it more and more in more gentle ways, you see like, oh, this isn't a big deal. This is something that passes. It's just like, another cloud moving across the sky. It's not permanent. It's not forever. Not a big deal. Nothing to be scared of. And so I think just getting that familiarity is really important.
One of the things that I know about our audience is there are a lot of people who are listening to their inner wisdom. They do know that there are possibilities for them. They're working on building businesses, writing books, doing big things, or things on the scale that they want to locally within their own communities, which are amazing. And what I hear a lot is that, well, Julie, it feels like in the 80s and 90s, there were a few people on a small stage speaking. And now we've got a very large stage with a lot of people speaking, and it's beautiful. But where is there room for me? And I
Mhm.
just want to mirror to them just not just all the possibilities, but all of the beauty of their soul and what their soul is here to do and create and experience. What do you say to those people who are like, where is there room for me?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and there's a lot of different things. So one is like creativity, success, ultimately what we're talking about. it's not a zero sum game. Like everyone out there can be successful. There's plenty of room for everyone. And just because the creator economy and like solopreneurship is becoming more of a part of the foundation of, our society, it only means that the opportunities for you to do that are growing, not shrinking. The other perspective is like, I suppose just to tag that, like one of the things that I kind of love and it always blows my mind is I'm from Austin and there's one of the big theaters here where bands perform or like comedians go, whatever. It's about like a 2,500 seat place that's downtown called the Moody Theater. It's where they tape ACL, if anyone's familiar with Austin City Limits. Anyway, point is that constantly I will see advertisements for people that are coming there, for bands, for podcasts, doing live podcasts, for comedians, whoever. They're sold out. The show is sold out like 6 months in advance. And I'm like, I've never heard of this person. Like, I've never heard of that person. I've never heard of this person. Like, how are these people selling 3,000 tickets to something? And I've never heard of them. And it's because of what we're talking about. It's like the internet, there's so much interest in people and in ideas and creativity that it's really, we're in a beautiful era right now for that. So someone shouldn't be dissuaded by the lack of opportunity. And then the empowering bit is like no one has had the same life experience you have. No one, even if you think of, I was talking with one of my best friends about this last week, like the closest person, if we look at the nurture and nature argument, the closest person to has had the same life experience as you is like a sibling. So
Mhm.
like you're like my brother and I entered the world in the same in the same way through the same doorway, the human doorway, and we lived our childhoods together and we're very different people in very different places. And it's like, but how could that be? How could we be so different? Of course there's similarities, but it's like we had the exact same lives pretty much, but they're so divergent, right? So even that, we have different perspectives on reality and what it means to be human and what's important. And so if we think about that, like what we have to say, our perspective on life is one of one. And remembering that and honoring that is how you'll be successful, how you'll find your voice in the world. That's why it's called your voice. Your creative voice is because only yours sounds like that. And it's honoring that as opposed to looking at it through the lens of like minimizing the importance of your own experience and what you have to offer. It's only whenever you trust that what you can say does have value that you'll begin to see the proof that that's true. And the interesting thing is like a lot of people think that you have to have really big ideas, like these mind-blowing insights to make an impact on people. And the reality is that life doesn't mainly consist of mind-blowing insights. Life is small, little, kind of boring fundamentals that we're all dealing with. And so the perspective that you have, even on the small things, sometimes can be more powerful than the giant ideas. So I think just keeping that in mind can be really useful.
One of the things that I've noticed as you start to have more and more people surrounding you is that your vision, you talked about this a little bit before, if you're taking things to a bigger place, it's possible for that message to get a little bit corrupted by all of the different voices that are around you. This person wants you to go in this direction, this person wants you to go in this direction. How do you stay centered, grounded, listening to your own voice?
Yeah, it's always a gut check. Everything is a gut check. And if I think about like I'm very honest with myself. So I'll be like, what are my intentions here? Because, like anyone else, I'm a human. And what do we, no matter how much we, work on ourselves, fundamentally from an animal perspective, we're gonna crave, success, attention, status, all of those type of things. And so it's like whenever I'm creating something, I will do this gut check and be like, why am I like putting this out? Does this interlock with the values, like my real vision of what I'm trying to do? Or am I doing this to generate more attention and engagement on social media? Is this for likes or is this actually, an insight, something valuable that will nurture someone in their lives? Yeah. So for me, it's that. And I think that, I mean, as far as other people in the same world as you, like everyone is playing the game a little bit differently. And I don't know how relatable this is, but I suppose we could look at this like people could look at this in their friendships, their professional lives and things like that. Everyone is playing the game a little bit differently, and everyone is looking to get something different out of it. And I think that being clear with yourself about what the role you're creating and who you want to be in
Mhm.
the game is really valuable, because I know a lot of ways that I could be more successful. I know a lot of ways, I could make more money, I could have more followers, I could have more sell more books, but I'd rather trust the work I'm doing that feels important and meaningful and honest to me, and know that like that stuff will continue to grow to the level that is it needs to be at. Like whatever my space needs to be in the ecosystem, like that's fine. Because ultimately what happens is that if your work and your focus becomes the growth part of things, then that's what your work becomes. And the actual information that you're transmitting becomes secondary. And you ultimately, like I've been through this with my podcast, like you become this, you cease to exist in a weird way, and you become a artifice for basically corporate sponsorship, for
Mhm.
advertisements, for publicists, for that type of stuff. It's a whole different world, and I think being clear about like how you're trying to exist in that world is really really important, because ultimately what I think one person will definitely find is that that level of notoriety isn't exactly what they thought it would be
Mhm.
whenever they were trying to get it. And in terms of longevity and meaning, doing work that's actually meaningful to them and not being influenced by a lot of those other outside things will generate a longer experience in this kind of creative world.
Something that's been calling to me is just a year of no social media, no taking in other content, but just being the channel. And
Yeah.
oh, I like long for it. Just want to stop consuming and just create again.
So, and I love that. And here's how this is funny. So, I call it the reptile brain, like whenever you have strategic thoughts. So, because it's just like, I imagine, if you see a nature documentary and there's this like a giant snake just like eating a mouse with like no expression on its face, it's just this cold, logical, like emotionless. So, the reptile brain, whenever you were saying that, is like that's an awesome idea, and this is just an example of how you can take a genuine thought but also make it, help it be successful. You can kind of use both parts of the brain. Is like I was thinking when you mentioned like a year off social media, that would be a really fascinating actual usage of social media once you get back on it, is to then tell the
Mhm.
story of like I was gone for a year, here's what happened, and you can enter back using the very thing that you were, you know doing to begin with. So just a fun thought.
Yeah, and I didn't think about it that way. I more meant more like create the content, pass it over to my
Right.
team to put it up, but yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I love it. I love your work. Thank you so much for the book that you wrote, because it really touched my heart and helped me in a time that I really need it. Brave New You, a roadmap to believing that more is possible. Corey, where can people find you? Where can they find your book and your podcast?
Yeah, well, first, just thanks for having me on. This was super fun. They can find the book. It's on Amazon, everywhere books are sold. If they want to go to bravenewubook.com, there are 12 guided meditations that I created that you can download. You can get for free if you order the book there. And then on social media, I'm Hey Corey Allen on there. And I have a Substack that I write a weekly newsletter of just short kind of thoughts and insights and kind of teachings. And they can come over there as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll put all of that information in the show notes below.
Awesome. Thank you.
If you feel called to become a certified angel messenger, energy healer, and medium, join my Angel Reiki school to learn all three at once. I'll also give you my secret sauce for building a successful, sustainable spiritual business. We're in person November 2024 and April 2025, or start the Angel Reiki school online on the first of the month. For personal messages from your spirit team, book a one on one reading with me. New slots are released monthly via email. Join my membership to grow spiritually, heal deeply, and connect with your angels for daily guidance and support on your personal journey. Visit theangelmedium.com/contact if you'd like to chat about which program would be best for you. Now, take a deep breath, tune into the loving presence of your angels, and ask them, how would you have me be of service, experience joy, and open my heart to abundance today? And let them whisper answers to you all day long. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you back here Thursday with a brand new episode.